Product Market Fit, Act 1, Scene 1, Action. Can you tell that I grew up in Southern California near Hollywood? My sister used to actually work in the industry. She still does a little bit now and then. And so when she was working on ER, we got to go in and meet George Clooney.
Wow.
It was certainly an interesting experience.
Wow.
This is back when he was just a regular television star and not an international movie star and tequila billionaire.
Yes.
But he was still very confident even then. We came in and we chatted with him and Anthony Edwards and some of the other stars. And my mother told George, "Your eyes are so beautiful." And he said, "You must have been drinking, Mrs. Ye." So he's a very charming fellow. Anyways, so we're going to talk very quickly about product market fit. So I'm going to assume everyone has heard about product market fit like 15 million times, right? So let me ask you this question. What is product market fit? We use this term all the time. Who wants to define it? Yes.
Doing something people love and having people using it in a repetitive fashion.
Yes, so I think that is an excellent, that's an excellent definition. I'm going to zero on the most important part of it, which is the repetitive fashion, right? So classically speaking, with product market fit, it's all about getting a product where you can actually scale. The repetitive is the part which implies scale. If you don't have a repetitive product, it's not scalable. It might be that people really love spending time with me one-on-one, but that's not true product market fit because it's not something where there's a market that we can actually scale up to meet it. So the reason why product market fit is so important for scale is without it, everything else starts to fail. So if you think about all the different growth factors, when it comes to market size, product market fit essentially determines your market size because your product market fit is based on the market. And if you have product market fit in a very niche market, that's limiting your product size. That's limiting your market size. From a distribution standpoint, the repetitive factor comes in. Right? You can only get distribution if you have a market segment where they learn about things in a similar fashion and where you can actually reach them in a scalable way. And so on and so forth. Network effects. Well, if you have network effects, how do you have network effects unless there's actually a product that everyone is sharing and using together? So product market fit is pretty darn important. Now, let me ask this question. How many of you think you currently have product market fit? Oh, maybe. So let's start with that. Let's talk about PublicFast.
Yep.
So how do you determine how PublicFast has product market fit?
So yesterday we talked with Jeff and I showed him like our funnel of customers. By the end of the day, we have right now 880 clients who run at least one campaign at PublicFast, and around 100 of campaigns, 100 of brands who run at least 6 campaigns.
Got it.
But some of these customers they don't run campaign every month. Some of them run 2 campaigns per year. Some of them run like 3 campaigns per month and they finish.
Right.
And they're waiting for the next year. And this is some kind of so we have like different kind of customers, and for each of the individual or verticals is depends this product market fit. As
Right.
for me, I think so.
Right.
So we need to find like the way how to attract like each of the group of these customers for us.
Right. So what Vitaly's saying reveals a couple of things, right? So the first is when it comes to product market fit, it doesn't mean that every single customer is permanently on board and retained. It's a question of what percentage of the customers are actually on board. If you look, for example, in the classic SaaS world, so many of you have a SaaS product. In the SaaS world, the metric we always use is are you able to generate at least 80% retention year over year in terms of your billings? So, for example, if you sign up $1,000 worth of customer accounts today and they're on one-year contracts, when they renew, do you have at least $800 worth of customers? Now that's the minimum bar, right? It really should be higher. And as I think I've even discussed the example of companies like Dropbox, the key is their renewal rates are actually above 100%. So because customers are expanding their usage of the product, that's a very clear sign of product market fit. And that's why Dropbox trades at such a premium to competitors like Box, where actually that percentage is lower and they even be sub 100%.
But we are talking only on the second purchase, or we are talking for some period of time that they are using our
Period of
product?
time. So SaaS, because, and again, it's going to vary. So the SaaS contracts are generally done on an annual basis, and
Yeah.
that's why we use annual as the judgment. In your case, what you're saying is some people use it on an annual basis, some people use it on a monthly basis. But it
But we
doesn't.
are not SaaS, we are marketplace.
Right.
So we are on transactional fees.
Right.
This is the change.
But from your perspective, it is the case that even though you're not charging a monthly
Yeah.
subscription, you are trying to ascertain on a annual basis, if your customer used you for $1,000 last year, how much are they going to use you for next year?
Mhm.
Right? Even though it's not technically a subscription,
Yeah.
the ability to measure their adoption and usage
Uh-huh.
is important. So there's a couple other things that come out of what Vitaly said. The other thing is that different customers can be measured differently. So there are some customers, in the end, you're going to look at a broad measure like year-over-year retention.
Mhm.
But the reason those other measures are important is because waiting a year to see whether or not you're succeeding is not a good way to learn, right? A 12-month learning cycle is just going to be crippling.
Yeah.
So you have to look for specific metrics that you can use to determine whether or not the fit exists. And hopefully those metrics are things that you can look at on a daily or even weekly basis. How many people have ever heard of Larry Page's toothbrush concept? Anyone? So Larry Page famously is the founder, co-founder, and CEO of Google. And his toothbrush concept is, ideally, you have a product which is used daily, like a toothbrush. I'm going to assume that most of you use a toothbrush on a daily basis. I've seen you guys smile. It seems like a fairly safe assumption. I actually think you should use a toothbrush more often than once a day. Personally, I would try to use it like at least twice, perhaps 3 times a day. And I would also add that flossing is more important than brushing, so you should definitely floss every day as well. But the point is the same. So why would you want your product to be used like a toothbrush? What are some of the reasons why that would be important? Any thoughts at all? Again, yes.
It makes out a habit.
Yes, that is absolutely answer number one. Answer number one is it helps develop their habit. And you see this even in SaaS products. The SaaS products that are used on a daily basis tend to have a higher retention than the ones who are not used on a daily basis. That's why even products where usage has nothing to do with revenue, like LinkedIn, have attempted to boost engagements, simply because engagement and regular usage dramatically improves the retention over time. But there are a couple of other pretty straightforward reasons why toothbrush-style usage would be good for you. What's another one? Z, ready to speak? Go ahead. No?
Frequency.
Frequency, yeah. So the more often somebody is using it, presumably the more valuable it is, right? If something is worth $100 to the user every time they use it, and they use it once a day, that's way more valuable than something that's worth $100 to them that they use once a year. So frequency of usage dramatically increases the sort of value creation as well. So all of these things go into measuring product market fit. And the reason product market fit is so important, besides the fact that it's scalable and all that, is without product market fit, you don't have a sustainable business. So let's sort of rack our brains. Can you think of any sustainable businesses, any successful businesses where there's no product market fit? It's hard, right? I would say that there is one special category where you can get away with not having product market fit, and that is where you have a government that requires people to buy it from you. I would argue, I don't know how it works for those people outside the United States, I only know my own experience, but in the United States, the Internal Revenue Service collects the taxes. I would say that as an individual user, the Internal Revenue Service does not have product market fit with me. I do not enjoy using the product. I do not find it easy to use. If there are questions, there's no help, and they just randomly, will fine and penalize you for all sorts of things. But the IRS is still around and grows every year. Why is that? The government requires it, and if you don't file your taxes, you'll be like Wesley Snipes and end up in jail. Now, What this means, of course, is that if you guys are able to get your respective governments to mandate usage of your product, you don't need product market fit. But for the rest of us, it's critical. And the example I always use for audiences around the world is a product like Groupon. So I don't know, has Groupon had made it over to Europe through CityDeal, right? So you guys have at some point in time used a Groupon. How many people have at some point in time used Groupon? And how many people have used it recently? Classic example.
I used it recently to hire salesmen.
There you go.
From the Groupon.
See that you figured out the right way to use Groupon. But like Groupon, is there a big market for it? Absolutely, right? Did they get massive distribution and virality out of people trying to get enough people to get the Groupon together? That was the brilliant part of it. Of course, it grew super fast. Are the margins high when you don't actually provide the service? You're just charging other people? Yeah. And there's network effects as well. But Groupon, again, it's worth billions of dollars, but I would characterize it as a failed business because there is no product market fit for either the consumer or for the merchant. So when we think, go ahead.
What do you mean?
So with the consumer of Groupon, we just saw all of you stopped using it. And you didn't stop using it because it didn't give you bargains. You stopped using it because there was too much trouble, because the value created just wasn't worth the hassle, and it really did not engender repeated usage on your part. And the same holds true for the merchants who had to accept those Groupons. They jumped onto it because they're like, wow, this is an incredible customer acquisition tool. I don't have to pay anything up front. I pay on the back end. I'm giving away services that I might not otherwise be able to use anyways, right? A classic example is if you're a massage parlor and you don't have someone in the massage table at any given time, that slot is just wasted. It's not like you get that time back. It's not like selling, chocolate bars or something like that. So anytime you have wasting assets, it's particularly appealing. And so merchants jumped all over it and adopted it, but then they realized, hey, wait a minute, the kind of people who are willing to go through this rigmarole to get 50% off a massage are also the kind of people that don't tend to come back and pay 100% for those massages. And so as a result, the merchants didn't get what they were looking for. They thought they were getting customer acquisition, and what they were getting instead was very expensive discounting. And so the stated purpose of Groupon for those merchants was to get them new customers, and the actual purpose was to lose them money. No offense to any Groupon founders or anything like that. Okay. So when we think about your problem canvas statements, you're talking about what is the problem that you're solving, and it's really important to solve one of these important problems. But it's not enough just to solve the problem and be able to check the box and say we solved the problem. You have to be able to tell, did you solve the problem in a way that actually generated the product market fit? And for me, the key figures to look at are those usage figures. And again, it's going to vary depending on the type of the product, right? So a mobile app has one set of usage figures, an enterprise SaaS app has another, and some sort of hardware device has a third, because I know that we've got examples of all these different kinds of products in this room. But regardless of who it is, regardless of the nature of your product, what you should be looking at is, what is the usage? Is the usage intense, and is the usage frequent and sustained? Because if the usage is not intense, frequent, and sustained, then how are you creating value? Your product should create value through their usage, right? It's not just theoretical value, it's the actual value of someone using it to make their lives better. And if they're not using it frequently, that can be tricky, right? Maybe you have a high enough value transaction where, like for example, a lottery ticket, the winning lottery tickets may not be very frequent, but they definitely create a lot of value for their user. But that's not how most products work. So frequency is generally important. Intensity, as I mentioned, is another thing. In fact, to the extent that people use products intensively, it indicates just how much they actually want and value those products. Do you have any products that you enormously value but don't use intensively?
Gym memberships?
gym membership? Do you value your gym membership?
Well, whenever I'm buying it, I value it a lot, and then I just end up not using it.
So here's the
Nevertheless,
interesting.
Something you have to have.
So here's the interesting thing about gym memberships. I would argue that what a gym membership is selling is not gym membership. What a gym membership is selling is the theoretical feeling that you're actually doing something about your health. It is not a coincidence that like gym memberships are enormously seasonal here in the United States. There is a giant spike in both sales and usage in January that rapidly falls off because we have this tradition of the New Year's resolutions. And every year Americans wake up on New Year's Day feeling fatter than ever, because we're getting fatter than ever, and they say, I'm going to do something about it. So in the field of gym memberships, you could say, I'm going to really work on getting the right machines in, and I'm going to make sure that people have this incredible experience when they come in to exercise. But in actuality, that would be a waste of money for most gyms, because that stuff actually doesn't get used. It's only valuable in as much as you convince people to use it. Now, I'll tell you where you do get value out of it, because again, a lot of those gyms, like classic 24-hour fitness, are essentially churn and burn. They rely on people buying, not using, getting sick of it, not renewing, and then 3 years later saying, oh, I've gotten even fatter, I got to try this again. In contrast, the gym that I go to is the JCC, the Jewish Community Center in Palo Alto. And so what they do is they don't advertise based on, we have these phenomenal machines and weights. What they advertise is we have classes. And especially, we have free childcare for your kids when you come and work out. And so what they are doing is they're actually saying, what are ways that we can actually make gym usage more habit forming, more habitual, more intense? Well, one is there are all these classes that you can take, and they're at a specific time with a specific instructor. And so now, instead of having to motivate yourself to go to the gym and lift weights, you're saying, oh, I'm going to go to Adam's class, and Adam will be sad if I don't show up, so I should definitely go there. And if you're a parent and you're like, not only that, but I get to dump my kids off on someone else for an hour and relax, boy, now all of a sudden you're reinforcing the desire to have that gym membership, and you're starting to get real product market fit. So what I would propose is that during the course of the one-on-one times, in addition to reviewing the problem canvas, that we also sort of say, again, we don't need to worry about your exact product market fit now, but as we look at the problem canvas and talk about the product, I would propose that in the one-on-one, we spend time figuring out what are the metrics that would indicate product market fit. Because it's very easy when you are doing anything to then look at the results after the fact and say either I have product market fit or I don't have product market fit, depending on what you want to see in the numbers. And people often say you torture the numbers. Like most analysis that like a McKinsey does, because Abru, you know this very well, the client often has an idea of what answer they want, and then they hire you to provide numbers that give that answer. They don't say that, but you know that's the case.
Justify their decision.
Exactly. We don't want to do that because those people are big companies that want to waste money as part of their political gains. We are startups that want to build real value. And so as part of today's one-on-ones, we will sit there and we'll say, well, what are the metrics and what are the numbers, what are the targets within those metrics that would clearly indicate that we have product market fit and that we're on the right track. And if we set up a number and a couple months down the line, you look at it and you're like, this number is falling short, then you might say, I'm not sure, I've been feeling good about this, but I'm not sure if we're actually there because this is the goal we set out. And it's setting that goal in advance that allows you to have that decision. Now you may still say, you know what, even though that number, we didn't achieve that number in terms of intensity, the repeat usage is so much better than we expected that it's actually still product market fit. That's fine, but at least you're doing it based on comparison to a number that you set in advance. So you know whether or not you were successful by your own definition. All right, so with that, it looks like we're almost to the 1:45 time. Maybe one or two questions about product market fit, if you have any, and if not, we will dive into our one-on-one time slots. So,
Can I do a follow-up on the gym?
yes, please.
And then if you look at the gym membership again, people who sign up for the gym or actually end up not using it.
Yeah.
And that's very similar to Groupon logic where people, like who buy Groupon, maybe like they don't use it again.
Right.
So like
I would consider it as not having a product market fit. I mean, so let me put it this way: exercise. So let's imagine that I described the following drug. We have this drug that you can take, and if you take it on a daily basis, on average, you will live 15 years longer. You'll be much better looking. You'll have much more energy, and you'll be happier. How does that drug sound?
Weed.
Well, no. Weed has its own set of things. Weed is, you'll be happy. The other ones aren't part of it. But if I were to describe exercise as a drug, that's what it would be. And so if it has those characteristics, why is it that everyone in the world isn't exercising regularly? Now, to some extent, it's a failure of marketing. There's also other reasons. I mean, it's non-trivial. But I would say that, you know, exercise has achieved product market fit for a certain segment of the audience, but the gym people have not done a good job of figuring out how to actually get the casual person into it. I have my own ideas on how to do this. I think that as we get to sort of augmented reality, virtual reality, artificial intelligence, it may be that we will get people to the point where we actually get them to do this, right? Because people are willing to go for hikes if every morning they wake up and Alexa says, "Hey Murad, it's time for your hike. Why don't you climb onto your virtual reality treadmill and we'll take you through, you know, these things that we know that you enjoy." And for some people it might be scenes of nature, for other people it might be a city scene, for a third person it might be they're running from aliens who are trying to kill them, who knows, right? But we would actually be able to reduce the friction to action. Like gyms, at their heart, have this core problem, which is you have to go to them. And that, I think, is a flaw in design. Anyways, I'd be happy to talk about my theories on gym membership and other things as well. But my point, the broader point is for something like a gym membership or a Groupon, where it's essentially you're exploiting your customers, and they're not really getting the value out of it. You're exploiting a moment of weakness or a moment of impulse. Yeah, you can build products that way. And by the way, if Groupon had sold themselves to Google for $6 billion at that point, which would be worth like 30 or 40 billion now because Google's stock price was much lower, you know, the founders would have made out like bandits. They still made out pretty darn well. But they would have made out even better if they actually created the new way that every small business marketed themselves. All right, fantastic. So I will bid farewell to the folks who are on the live stream. And we've got the sign-ups here. Everyone just go ahead and keep working, and we'll do these one-on-ones. And then after that, do we have any final send-off for the weekend, Jeff? A little preview of Monday, perhaps?
Yeah, we talked about that this morning, and just to reiterate, Monday morning we will be at Amazon Web Services, just over the hill on University. Precise instructions will be placed on the Slack channel over the weekend. We'll start at 8:30. So we've had a request from Amazon that the gentleman that's receiving us has a 10 o'clock meeting, and he has about a 90-minute presentation for us, and the only time he can do it is at that time. So it's an early start. If that's problematic, let's all meet at 7 o'clock downtown, and I'll buy everybody breakfast, and then we'll go together in an Uber. How about that? So if you're having, I'll put that invitation out too. That's a real invitation if you want to have a real breakfast.
If you buy me breakfast, I give you a ride so you don't have to use Uber.
Hey, good.
Hey, look
I
at
got
that.
a ride. Who else is coming to breakfast?
Well,
And I just removed the mufflers from my car so you do not get to wake up.
Ah, okay, perfect.
well,
So-
check with Adam. You should lobby Adam for a ride. Otherwise, you may still have to Uber over. But yeah.
Cool. So I'll put the location for breakfast at 7 a.m. online, and anybody that wants to join. Anybody that's late will not be let in.
Wow.
Amazon is very paranoid about security.
So this is serious. So you got to be there by 8:30, and we do need an RSVP today. I know we put that out because Amazon requires everybody's name and ID number before we go. So I need to know, you know, actually by the end of the day today, in an Excel file, if you're planning to be there on Monday, so I can share that with Rich, our host.
And
And that's a serious request.
And Amazon is paranoid and all those different things, but this is a great opportunity to go in and see what it looks like from the inside.
So, who's going?
Conrad is coming.
Who's
Yeah,
going?
everyone.
Yeah.
Everyone.
Coming or going?
What's the difference?
Coming technically means coming here, and going, since it'll be there, is going there. Now, if
Yeah,
I was
but-
sitting there, I would say who's coming.
But you said
This
it's
is like
just
a
here,
comedy
right?
routine.
It's the transitory nature of the verb
Sorry, my
expressing direction.
English is not good, my friend.
But I'm pretty sure it's the same way in Polish, right? There's a difference between coming and going.
I will refer this to the linguistics experts.
All right. Anyway,
Suffice to say, please let Jeff know. It sounds like everyone's gonna go. Please provide your
Just need the
name and
emails,
ID
phone numbers.
information
Yep,
as requested so that Amazon's army of drone security don't hunt you down.
yeah, and so 8:30 to 10, we'll hear the Amazon culture of innovation, and then we're going to kick off with some design thinking principles, as mentioned before, customer interviews, and preparing for customer research. We'll work on that for a couple hours, which is a nice continuation of this work, leaving you prepared to start contacting customers by midweek. And then Chris is going to spend the last couple hours of the day talking about the landscape of fundraising in Silicon Valley to start.
Because we heard the request, people wanna talk
Thank
about
you.
fundraising. We are responsive to requests. We aim to please.
Sure, we'll stream the whole day.
Yeah, all right.
Yep. Great.
Excellent. All
Okay,
right,
is
well, let's-
anyone there? Saurabh, are you there on the line still?
Yeah, I'm there.
Okay, do you want us to, do you want to have a conversation, or is it quite late there at night?
I have few things to discuss, so, what time, I would be getting a job, so around.
Well, we've got a block of time here, it looks like, at about 3:40 PM, which would be, I don't know, where are you again?
That would be 2 hours from now.
So I think it will be close to, 3:40 AM, in India.
I think you may wanna pick another time.
Yeah,
Get some
I
sleep.
think so. Get some sleep, and we'll pick up on this with you next week or something, okay?
Sure, okay, we can work at that, yeah.
Very good.
All right, great to catch you, and thanks for joining.
No problem. Thanks.
Good
Thanks
night.
for this
Of course.
website. All right.
Have a good night.
Good night.
That's dedication, I tell you.
Yep.
All right, so we got our sign-up list. Let's, we should stop recording, because otherwise there'll be a recording of like this empty wall here the whole time. I don't think it'll be
Okay,
that
so
interesting.
Chris is gonna start with Adam.
You both
No,
start
no.
with.
Oh, wait,
we're both starting
Oh,
with-
I'm sorry,
Yeah, it's me.
Yes,
with Utku.
yes, but first, we should, so the.
Yeah, once you come in here,
I
you're
call it
trapped.
the,